Hey Stampers, welcome to my craft room. I'm Kim from Stamping Imperfection and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and today I want to share some card making techniques. Now these card making techniques that I'm going to share are perfect for beginners, and they're definitely card making techniques that experienced stampers and crafters use all the time in their crafting. So for the card making technique, I'm using this I'm creating card making technique album for myself, and I'm using this a little photo album that you can get at like CVS or Walmart. There's 48 pages in here, and I feel like I can easily fill this with techniques. And I thought while I'm making it, I'll share it with you. So I'm creating the printables for the technique. All you have to do is create the cards, print, and then just cut out the technique, and you've got that to save. So I've cut out some 4x6 inch cards from my Whisper white cardstock, and they slide in here perfectly. So I'll do the technique on the card, and then later I'll cut it out. I'll print the technique and cut it out so I have the directions. So when I need a little inspiration, I can flip through this. And I've shared 2 different videos already, and today is the 3rd video in my series, and I'm super excited about it because I can't wait to fill this album. I feel like I have individual videos on my YouTube channel about all of these techniques, but I definitely wanted to do a series of videos for people who are just getting started, or for those of you who, like me, maybe stepped away from it for a little while and you just needed a bit of a refresher. And you know, some techniques you learn, you do them a few times, then you forget about them. So I'm going to remind you about a few things. Today I'm talking about 2 specific topics. I'm going to be talking about masking techniques, and there are a lot more masking techniques out there that I won't be sharing today because some of them are really advanced techniques. And I'm also going to be doing some ink blending techniques. And these happen to be my go-to favorite techniques of all, so I wanted to share those. Alright, so I think I'll start out with the ink blending because those are the easiest. So ink blending is a really nice way. I'm just going to keep my paper over here so I can see it. Ink blending is a really nice way for you to add a beautiful background to your stamp or to your card, and it's a beautiful way for you to actually add a little bit of a detail that will help you highlight something that you want to highlight, some part of the image or the image itself. And there are lots of different tools you can use for ink blending, and I'm pulling out some of my favorite ones here. And these are my favorite ones, and all of these are available from Stampin' Up! With the exception of this one. I still use this a lot. I know other people probably don't, but I actually still really like this. So to do ink blending, I think that the first time actually for years, I used these sponges from Stampin' Up! You get 3 in a package, and I actually at one point had one of these for every ink color, and I purchased these and then I cut them into 4 pieces, so I had little wedges. I found this size are really easy to hold on to. And then I took one of my punches, like for example, like the Keeping Tabs punch, and I punched out the tab. I actually have a smaller tab punch that I do this with, but this one will work fine. And I folded it like this, and then I took my stapler. punched it like this, like that. So that gave me a little handle to hold onto, and I used this for ink blending. Then I was able to write the color so that I was able to save these. So I only had to buy enough of these and cut them in 4 to have one for every color. And it was actually a really reasonable way to have an ink blender for every color. So that is one tool, and it's probably one of the more cost-effective tools, I think, for doing that. So those are the Stampin' Sponges. Then another tool that you can find, this is what I graduated to, these little wooden handles and these little foam pieces. The little wooden handles have Velcro on the bottom, and they actually stick to the felt on the back of that little foam piece. And these are pretty nice. This wooden handle is not my favorite. Like, I don't know where I got this particular set, but I don't like the stapled version at all. Like, the ones that are glued on with really good adhesive are way better than this. So I'm not sure what brand this is, but I don't love them. And I've had them for a long time, but the Velcro does come off, and I find myself reattaching it more than I would like to. But this is a really nice tool. I love this tool, and I do actually have foam, one foam for every ink color. And this is how I store them. I actually have new foams in all of these. So I have this little plastic fridge bin that I got that is just the right width for these coin pockets that I got. I labeled all of them, and I store the foam inside so I can fit them in here. I don't have all of the colors here. You need 2 fridge bins of this size. So I have like 4 or 5 handles, and that's plenty. Like, you don't need a handle for every color. You just need a couple of handles, actually one handle, and foams for whatever ink pads that you have. So that is a nice cost-effective way too. Now, Stampin' Up! Also has these daubers. Now, I got the case on Amazon, and I actually really like using daubers, especially for smaller spaces. They fit on your finger, and you can hold them. They work nicely. And I've labeled the side of mine with a white paint pen. So I have this white paint pen that I use, this Posca white paint pen that I use to label them. So when I use them, I label the colors, and you can see I've already started doing some fall crafting because these are all fall colors. So this is a really nice way to do it, and I use these for detail things. So I find that these are really nice. You can also do techniques with these, and like one technique you can use here, this will be one of our techniques for today. You can make polka dots with these. I already have this inked up, like I didn't even have to re-ink it. And you just swirl this on your ink pad, and then I'm just pushing it down and giving it a twist. And you can see the ink actually lasts a really long time, remarkably long. So that's a really fun technique. So that's a sponge dauber polka dot. Now the other thing and this is the newest tool, these blending brushes. Like, these blending brushes are fantastic, and you know, you can get them. Stampin' Up! Has blending brushes. I think that they come in packages of 3. Let me just check that. Oh, they have different sizes of blending brushes, and they have blending brush storage containers. The blending brushes come in, I think they come in sets of 3, and they're 6 inches long, and they are washable. I actually recently washed these all off. Because we use dye inks, they come right off with water. I run this under the faucet, and I rub it in my hand just like this until it runs clear, and then I put them in this cup. That's why they're in the cup, actually. I put them in the cup to dry, because you want to stand them up to dry. You don't ever want to lay them on the bristles. So there's three of the regular size ones, which is, it looks like it's about this size, for $15. And then there's also a smaller blending brush, and that is also a set of 3, and they're gray handles. Like mine have black handles. Smaller ones are probably, I don't have Stampin' Ups, but they're probably like that size. And I do have a few smaller ones that I use once in a while, but this is actually a really nice size. So this is what I have. Now I do not have one for every color. I have one for each color family, and if I do a lot of different, like I have a few here that look like I use them for blues and greens recently, and all I have to do is wash these out when I'm done crafting for the day, and then by tomorrow I'll stick them in my cup. By tomorrow they'll be nice and dry, and I can, go ahead and craft with them again. So I don't have one for every color, but if I've used it for blue, if I'm using another blue, I will not hesitate to pull that out, because all I do is I just put it on my paper, and you can see there's no ink coming out of that. Even though it's stained, there's no ink coming out of that. So the blending brushes are great, and that's pretty much what I'm going to use today to show you the techniques that I want to show you. You need a brush. I'll pick a brush. This looks like I used green on it, so I'll pull out green. And again, if you don't have the brushes, the sponges, the daubers, these things, you might have these things. These all work great for your ink blending. There's none of those are bad things. You get a different look from each one. I just swirl it around on my ink pad, and then you want to like get a bunch of the ink off there, because my ink pads are new, so they're really inky. So you don't want a big blob of ink, and you just I come off the side, and I just start blending. And the trick is to try to get a beautiful, smooth background. And you can keep doing layers, and just keep doing the ink blending until you get the kind of blend you want. I really like it when the edges, like I'm trying to actually make the edges look darker, because sometimes when I come on, the edge gets really dark like that, and I actually really like that look. So I feel like it's a matter of what you like. Like sometimes you'll want a perfectly smooth ink blend like that. And just keep going until you get it. And also keep in mind that when it dries, it's going to look different than it does now. It'll actually look smoother once it's dry. Now I can actually do multiple colors. So let's say I want to do, if I wanted to do a rainbow, let me grab a yellow one here. This is my Lemon Lally. So I'll grab a brush that looks like I might have actually had yellow on it. Brush it off a little bit, and then I'm just going to come right down here. And you can do this with as many colors as you want. You can, put them next to each other and get as many colors as you want, and just blend. And you can bring your other brush back in and try to really blend out that line so you don't see this harsh line where you started another color. So you just keep blending and blending and blending. Now, paper matters. The smooth white cardstock that Stampin' Up! Uses, the Whisper White, is wonderful to blend on. It's so soft and smooth. Paper, if you were to look at paper under a microscope, it's unbelievable how it feels super smooth, but when you look at it under a microscope, it looks like mountains and valleys. It has a lot of texture, no matter how smooth it feels. And the smoother your paper, the better your blend is going to be. This is my, besides the Whisper White paper, and I'm not kidding about that, the Whisper White paper is really nice to ink blend on. This is the paper that you would want to get if you don't have any. Like, you can go to your local craft store, craft or art store, and get this Bristol paper. Definitely wait till it's on sale. I really like the Canson brand. It's very smooth. I get beautiful blends. So it does make a difference. So for technique number 2, I'm going to do a quick voiceover on this little part here. I'm just ink blending some Night of Navy ink onto my white cardstock, and I'm using a water lifting technique. This is a Stampin' Spritzer, so I'm misting some water on top. This gives me a light mist and small droplets, and when I'm done with the reaction, I just blot up the water, and you can see that it lifted the color. Now I have another spritzer that has a larger droplet. I like this one quite a lot for this technique. And I let it react. The longer you let it react, the more dramatic the ink lifting will be. And when you're done, you just blot it with a microfiber cloth or a paper towel. I love this effect for backgrounds. I think it's so pretty. It looks especially pretty on night sky blends. It almost gives you a snowy effect or a star effect. You do need to let it dry, and while I let it dry to prevent it from bending, I will put a clear block or a book or something heavy on top of it. And if that doesn't work to flatten out the paper, I will run it through my cut and emboss machine, just like I would a thin cut die. And I do put a piece of copy paper over the ink so it doesn't get onto my cutting plates. But I love the effect of this. And again, the longer you let the ink react, the more dramatic the result. And you need to play around with your spritzing bottles and how high you hold them to see how big the spots are, when you're done. So just experiment with the spritzers that you have. I think probably my favorite technique to do with ink blending is an ombre technique. So let me take this, and I'll just keep the blue out here. Ombre, you probably know, means different like shades of a color. So you have a darker version of that color to a medium to a light. And to do that, I always do it like this. So I'm going to take as much off here as I can. And I could do this directly, by the way. I could do this ink blending directly on my glass mat, but I'm kind of a mess, and I usually end up with it all over my hands if I do that. So I'm just going to ink blend like this. So I start at one end, and I keep blending, blending, blending. And then I just go up a little bit and kind of lighten up the pressure. So I lighten up the pressure quite a lot as I move up. And then as I start to get really light, I'll go back into my ink. And I'll go back over this end. So I'm going to darken this end up. I put a little more pressure on it, and then I just lighten up the pressure as I go up. And I keep doing this until I get a really nice blend. And I go a little farther up this time so I get some color up at this end, and I'm going to just do it again. For me, ombre is about patience, because it takes a little bit to get it where I want it to be. So I just keep blending I'll go just a little farther up. Just like that. So when I move this from the paper, you can see I'm starting to get a really pretty effect here. I actually really like that. That is ombre. So you just keep working on it till you get, you know, something that you really like. And I really like that, so I'm going to leave it. And I could spritz that and give it a spritz effect too. So that's ombre. Those all make beautiful backgrounds. Imagine this turned like this. Maybe spritz it a little. Maybe stamp it with a background snowflake stamp in white craft ink. And you have like a winter sky with falling snow. So my favorite masking technique involves using something called masking paper. So masking paper is just like it almost feels like printer paper, but it's got a sticky side, and it's a low tack sticky side. So there's actually an adhesive sheet here that you peel off to use this. So, and one sheet of masking paper goes a very long way. I find that I tend to be very frugal with it. Now I'm going to use this stamp set, and I'm going to pull out one of my cards, and I'm going to need way more cards because I have several techniques. Now, if you don't have masking paper, there are other products that you can use. My favorite product to use, and I will be using this for one of the techniques, is this Post-it removaling labeling tape. And I always buy the 2-inch width because I really like the 2-inch width. I like the 2-inch width. I can speak. I feel like it's pretty good for most of the things I do. So this works really well, and I've used this so much. Like there's 36 yards in this package. This is only the second package I've ever purchased in 12 years, and I have a technique I'm going to share with you that I do all the time. Like several cards a year will be made with that technique. Another thing you can purchase is you can actually purchase masking tape. You want low tack tape. This is from Close to My Heart. This is like 3 inches. No, this is 4 inches wide. So this kind of thing also works. They also have had 1-inch tape. I like the 1-inch tape a lot. This is pretty wide. This would work great if you want to cover up a half a card, or if you're doing it in your scrapbook and you want to cover like the whole 12 inches. Like this actually would be really nice. And this actually feels better than the 1-inch stuff. It feels stickier than the 1-inch stuff that they had. That wasn't great. So there's this kind of thing too, and you can get this all over the place. So that works great. And regular Post-it notes work also. I didn't pull any of those out, but they work wonderfully. Tip it. All right, now I want to create a little scene. I want to have the flowers hanging above the skates. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this one. So I'm going to stamp this first because I want this to appear like it's in front. So I'm going to stamp this with the Memento, and I'm going to stamp it twice. I'm going to stamp it once on my project paper, just like that. And then I'm going to stamp it once on here. And I didn't re-ink because I don't need to see the image like perfectly. I just need to see it enough to cut around it. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to just take my fussy cutting scissors and I'm going to cut around it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't, like, I want to cut at least on the line or close to the line. Not too, I don't want to go over the line into the image too much. This is a fussy one. So I'm going to kind of go around all these little berries and stuff. I'm not being super fussy. And it only takes a couple minutes to cut it out. And I can reuse this multiple times. Like when I'm done, I will stick this mask in the Sophisticated Sled stamp case with the stamps and dies, and I'll have it to use again, because I can tell you this is a very favorite holiday image for me, because I have my old Radio Flyer sled that I put out on my porch every year. I have my old raggedy skates, and I always buy a new spray of like greens and berries and, you know, things from the craft store to decorate on top of it. So like I actually make this. So I have this left. I'll clip off this part, chuck that, keep the rest of it. Like this, I'm telling you, goes a long way. Okay, so now I just have to peel, this is the trick really, peel the backing off this. Just like that. I get rid of that back part because this isn't sticky enough to stick it back on there. I'll just stick it in the case. So I'm going to put that over the top. Now, there are other more artistic ways to do this, I should say. I'm not really sure if it's artistic, but like if I were a professional artist, instead of this, I might use masking liquid. So there's masking liquid and other products out there that also work. I didn't love it because you had to put the mask, you had to like paint the masking liquid on, let it dry, do your things, and then peel that masking liquid off. I didn't love doing that. And I don't have to be super careful. This whole thing isn't going to fit quite where I want it to. So I'm going to kind of stamp this in two ways, but first I want to stamp the skates. So I'm going to take the skates, and I want those to be as far down as I get them. I didn't really stamp my swag there, my greenery swag, up high enough, so it might have the skates going off the page. There we go. So I can pull this off. Now technically, I should have made another, and when I pull that off, you can see the skates look like they're behind that swag. So I also want to do that with the bow. Now, I don't want to take any chances that I'm going to cover the skates up there, so I'm just going to rip a piece of this off. This is where post-it notes come in really handy, and I don't have any on my desk at the moment. And I'm also going to use a little bit, actually I'm going to put this up a little higher too, so because the skates really will push out very far. I want to get that bow above my little swag there, so it looks like it's being held up by something. There we go. Now this is specifically masking tape. This removable labeling tape is not masking tape. Like, it's made for labels, and it doesn't absorb ink all the time when you're doing some of the things, like one of the techniques I'm going to show you in a couple of minutes. So you want to be careful with that. You know whether the tape, the masking material that you're using will absorb ink or it's going to hold the ink on top, because that'll make a difference whether you get it all over your hands or not. So I'll just stick this into my stamp case, but now you can see this looks like one thing. It looks like it was a scene already created by something else. So I love the masking technique for creating scene cards. The things you want to be in the front of the scene are the things you stamp first, and then you mask them. So you can see that swag, this swag here, looks like it's in front of the skates. It looks like that tie is behind, coming from behind it. So stamp what you want to appear in front first, mask it, then stamp the next layer. And if I wanted to put the sled in here now, I would mask both of these things and then stamp the sled so that all of this looked like it was in front of the sled. So that is masking. And one of the other masking techniques I like to do is to create like panels or strips. So I might not want to color in the whole card. But I do want to add a little color, and I want to be subtle about it. So I'm lining the edge up with my grid paper, and then I'm lining this up with one of the lines on my grid paper. So that will also hold it down. And I'll take a second one, and I'll leave about 1 inch to 1.5 inches or so, and I might pull out a different stamp set for this part. For the stamp, like if I do stamping on this. So I'm going to put that aside. I don't need that for this part of the technique. What I do need though is my blending brushes. And again, blending foams, sponges, daubers, all of the other things work just as well as the foams. So let's bring in the red Poppy Parade. Actually, let's bring in my favorite fall color combo. So I'm going to bring in, I'm bringing in Cajun Craze because my head is actually already on fall coloring, and I'm going to bring in, well, I'll just do it on here. I'll be careful to wipe off my my thing. So I'm just going to add some. You can do this with one color if you want. You can do it with as many colors as you want. So I'm just going to add a little Cajun Craze up here. And I want it to be, I don't want to put a lot of pressure down here because I'm going to add a second color. So I always keep the brushes out. It won't need any more ink on it. There's plenty of ink on it to blend it with my crushed curry. So here's crushed curry. So I'm going to use the same brush that I used with the Daffodil Delight. It will be just fine. It won't hurt the crushed curry at all. And I'm going to put some of that on here, and I want it to be very light down here because I want to add one more color. And I'm just going to lightly blend over the edge of the crushed curry, and then I'll bring the crushed curry brush back and blend over that space between them so I get a nice smooth blend between those two colors. I'm going to bring out a third color, and that is going to be Old Olive. And I'll use the same brush I used for my Granny Apple Green, because no more Granny Apple Green is actually coming off this. And notice that I'm starting on my tape here, and I'm just going to blend this across, and then when I've done that I will gently blend where the Old Olive meets the Daffodil Delight. And then I'm going to pull that Daffodil Delight brush back out and just blend those two colors together very nicely there. So I get a nice blend between the two colors. And I'll do a little more with that Old Olive, just like that. Now the magic of the masking here is that I can do like this little strip. I can do color blocking techniques where I maybe mask the paper so that I have like a whole bunch of stripes, or I have a whole bunch of squares, and I can do color blocking this way. It's so fun to use this technique. So now I've masked my card. I'm going to use a ridiculously large, actually I don't want to do that. There we go, that's perfect. Let's pull out a different block, more appropriate in size. And let's pull out a couple of colors. Let's do Flirty Flamingo. I need some summery colors, right? I need to get back into summer. So I'm going to stamp this in this space. And I'm stamping parts off onto the masking tape that I used. And let's use, I have to have some yellow in here. So I'm going to clean off my stamp. Always as you're using a stamp set, you'll think of other ways you want to use it as you're creating with it. I don't know if that happens to you. It definitely does to me. So there we go. I'll clean that off. And then, let's see, Melon Mambo, or let's do a blue. You can overlap them. Oops, I think I'm done with the blue. There we go. Now I've got my Granny Apple Green. And I'm going to ink this up and stamp it in between things. Over top of things. Just fill in some of the blanks. You have this beautiful panel. You can get yourself a ruler if you're fussy about it. I'm not too fussy. I generally don't use a ruler for this, but you can use the fine tip side. I'm actually worse with the ruler than I am freehand. And just put a line across it, and then do the same thing along the top. And then stamp your sentiment. Like, I think this looks so pretty. It's, again, another one of my favorite techniques. Now, I have this file full of these shape masks here. Like, I have squares, I have circles, I have rectangles of all different sizes. This one has scallops, you know, a couple different sizes here. Like, I have a whole bunch of these. I've gotten them all over the places. They all came with the insides, so that's really nice. Actually, I'm going to show you two different things here because I'm going to show you the difference. I'm going to show you how you might make a Halloween moon or a, you know, evening moon for winter or fall crafting. So here's what we're going to do. Now, remember I said to save these things? You can take this to your cut and emboss machine with a square die, a rectangle die, a circle die, a heart die, whatever you want, but keep these because you can make your own masks with whatever shapes you have in dies. These also punch. It's easier with dies than the punches, but you can do it with punches. Okay, so let me just grab a rectangle. Now, I think these are cut to 4 1/4 by 5, which I really like because with a card front, this will line up with the top of the card front. So I actually really like that when it does that. So let me pull out some masking tape here, and I'm just going to plunk this down. And so now I can take this and let me take a different color. Let's see, what might I want to put in the background? How about one of my new favorite colors? I love last year's In Colors. Wild Wheat. Ooh, I love this color. It makes such a pretty background. Okay, so again, I'm swirling it around on my ink pad. So I'm just going to take this, and I like to go along the edges. And oops, I'm getting some lines that I don't usually get. And I like it darker along the edges than on the inside. I kind of like a brightness on the inside. I don't know if I can get rid of those lines there. Those are pretty dark. I'll have to really make this dark. But you get the idea. And you have to experiment with how much ink you need on your brush. And you could make it all the same blend, but for this kind of thing I kind of like it when I have a little bit darker blend around the edges. I don't know why. It makes it almost look like a picture frame or something. So this is not a great blend, but you get the idea. And then you can take this off, just like that. Now you've got a beautiful background to stamp. Okay, now another thing is you can take, let's see, I think all I have is giant circles in here, but you know, you could make a smaller circle. Like you can also do this with cardstock. You don't need plastic to do this. What I like about the plastic is that I end up with a sturdy piece that I can use multiple times over and over. If I do it on cardstock, it really gets saturated with ink, and that can be problematic. So I want to kind of go around this, and I really want the blue. So let me grab the blue brush and pull out that Night of Navy. And I'm just going to run this under water to clean it off, which of course you can't do with a cardstock mask. I'm going to keep this out because I may want that again. Okay, so I'm just going to ink this up, rub a little off. Now, using the glass mat to rub this off, I can pick up the ink on the glass mat, so the ink doesn't get wasted by using the glass mat. So I'm just going to go around the edges of this, and I'm going to fill in the rest of the sky. I would actually spend a lot of time, if I were going to use this on a card, I would actually spend a lot of time filling in the rest of that sky. And I would do multiple colors. Like I would add a little purple, because I like a little purple, and maybe even black around the edges. Okay, now before I remove that mask, I'm going to pull out the Blackberry Bliss, and I'm going to grab a brush and this, and I'm just going to go around the edges. Okay, so I'm going to close this up, and I'm going to move that off. Oh, see, I got ink in it. But I'm going to fix that. I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to move this off to the side. I'm going to clean this up, put my brushes back. Oh, forgot to clean that off and put it back. And this just cleans up with water. And what I like to do, friends, is I like to take a piece of cardstock and just kind of soak up the ink, cover it all up. Alright, so I cleaned up and my panel dried, and it's a little warped, so I'm just having it rest for a couple of minutes over here on the side with the blocks on top of it to flatten it out a little bit. And if it isn't as flat as I would like it to, I'll run it through my my stamp and my cut and emboss machine. Alright, so I am going to finish up this panel because now I have my I've used the circle mask to create a night sky. So I want this to be like a moon. If you wanted it to be more yellow, you could fill it in with some lemon lolly, or you could actually use a lemon lolly cardstock to start with. I did that on a card in a video a couple weeks ago when I was using the Playful Ghosts set. But now I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull out my Smoky Slate ink, and I'm going to use my blender brush here, and I'm just going to do a little blending across the white of the moon in a couple of spots. Oops, that was a little dark. A couple of spots, and just kind of knock down that brightness a little bit and actually give it the look of clouds going across the moon. And how perfect is that for the night sky look? And you can, again, as I said, add some lemon lolly, but all of that started with that little circle mask, the inside circle mask. You could do this with a piece of masking paper, like punch out a circle, whatever size you want, and using masking paper, this will stick down. Ordinarily I would use some temporary adhesive, but I actually don't have any in my stash at the moment. So it's just a great way to create a great night sky and the moon, and that little Playful Ghosts stamp set would make a perfect set for a background scene like this. Like, I think that would be super fun to make a cute Halloween project. So I did the sponge daubers. So I made polka dots with sponge daubers. I did the ink blending, combining different colors, blending them together to get colors that I didn't even use. I did the ink blending with the spritzing to get the water effect, which you can do as a snowy effect or a stars in the background effect. And I did the ombre ink blending technique. I did the masking to create a scene. I did the masking to create a strip of ink blended color, and then I stamped a silhouette stamp over the top of that. Love that technique. Makes beautiful cards. I did the masking technique to make a strip so that I could block off the rest of the card and just stamp my images. And then I drew lines with my Stampin' Write marker, fine tip. This one I used a square stencil or mask and just ink blended a background and then stamped over the top of it. And then this one I used the circle mask to ink blend around it to create the night sky. And I mean, this technique doesn't have to be a night sky. It can just be a spotlight image. And I ink blended some clouds across it to make it look a bit more realistic. And then I sopped up the leftover ink. After I spritzed the ink a couple times that I had left over on my glass mat and just sopped it up with the paper with just a piece of cardstock, and I got this beautiful background, which is going to be so pretty on a card somewhere. Actually, this is going to be so pretty in my technique album. All of these are going in my technique albums. I will have printables for each of these techniques, so you can print them out and cut them down and add them to your book, just like I have with these other techniques. So I'll have those for you on my blog at stampingimperfection.com. And if you want any of the supplies I used today, you can go to my online store at shopwithkim.net. And I use the Sophisticated Sled, the Changing Leaves, and the Textured Floral stamp sets today. You saw me use my stamp chamois. You saw me use some masking paper. You saw me use some blending brushes. And if you don't want blending brushes, certainly you can use the foam with the wood tool, the sponges, or even the daubers, which I also showed you a technique for. Besides just ink blending, you can do all of these ink blending techniques with the daubers. It's a little bit more work because the daubers are small, but you can get in small spaces with that. Let's see, what else did you see me use? You saw me use some like masks that I had, but you can make your own. You saw me use the Stampin' Write marker here. This black Stampin' Write marker, I have a couple of these and I love having those on hand. What else? You saw me use the spritzer. This little spritzer here. And I think that was it, right? That was all the stuff you saw me use. So you can get your own, create your own cards here to make a technique album. You could actually get some pocket pages that you could put these in, some with the 4x6 pocket pages, and put it in a 3-ring binder if you wanted to. You could also print out the printables that I'm making on cardstock and do your technique right on the printables, and have full-size pages that you could put in a binder or page protectors in a binder. So there's lots of different ways that you could do this. So, you know, make yourself a technique album just for reference and for those days where you're not feeling especially inspired, so that you can actually you know, browse through your technique album, your card recipe files, your color coach, your ink swatches. I mean, all of those tools help you, you know, get inspiration where you might not have had inspiration to start with. So for me, those are all wonderful tools that I love to, you know, pull out always when I'm in need of a little inspiration to get myself created and started. So thank you so much for watching, friends. I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you found it informative. I shared 10 different techniques today, a couple of them inadvertently. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this gives you lots of ideas. All of these are great background techniques or scene building techniques. I love doing scene cards. It's one of my favorite things, and if you were to browse through my blog and my YouTube channel, you would find more detailed videos on some of those techniques as well. So thank you so much for watching. I'd appreciate it if you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you go to shopwithkim.net to browse around that Stampin' Up! Store of mine and check out what's there. If you make a purchase in my online store, I have some card recipe printables that I will send you as a thank you for making a purchase. So thank you so much for watching, and I would love it if you give this video a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe, friends. So have a wonderful day, and I hope you find time to be creative today.